Joined now by Governor Josh Green.
Yeah, we want to talk about your trip to Japan, but we wanted to start off trying to get an update on Maui. We know some of the cleanup started in upcountry, but do you have anything you can tell us as far as when it's going to be safe to go back to this area? Will it ever be safe?
It will be safe. It'll take a lot of work. First 3 months is getting toxins out of there with the EPA, then at least 9 months to get all the rest of the debris removed through the Army Corps of Engineers. That's a $1.5 billion project, but it will be safe. It just depends on how much heavy metals we find in the ground.
You know, last week we heard from students in the area, we heard from teachers. Some of the teachers are leaving, students feel they're not safe. You know, what can the Department of Education do to really give some stability to the schools that are there?
Well, a lot, but they need to depend on Department of Health too. So the Department of Health will continue to give updates. We have to make sure that we have samples from all of the dirt, all of the ash, and really all of the air quality monitoring. That's the best that you can do right now. It is a disaster zone and it is a concern, but most of the heavy metals do settle. They settle into dirt, so it's not as much up in the air. But lots of reporting is necessary, and we respect people if they feel they need to take time away.
We're entering the holiday season, and it's such a tough time, I think, especially for these families. And we're hearing stories about like insurance not giving enough money for them to rebuild. What can we do to kind of bridge that gap and keep these local families here?
Lots of things. You saw I announced a super fund basically to help families settle if they lost a loved one or were injured. That'll be a $175 million fund with partners including HECO and Kamehameha Schools and the county. Beyond that, we'll go to the next phase, which is we'll rely on businesses across the state to generously help. We will put grants out into play all across the board, but mainly it's a very long process. There will be settlements, there will be litigation. I'll try to make it as simple and seamless as possible so that we don't lose a lot of the money to the mainland.
Yeah, obviously the people of Maui are always going to be on our minds. But just recently we had the Mililani Mauka fire, and it's just very interesting because you look across the island and there's so much dry space. You know, and I know you said early on that we're in this new age of climate change and we could see a lot more of this. What can be done to prevent bigger fires like this from really taking hold in our community?
I feel strongly we have to have a climate impact fund that generates dollars from tourism, either through the TAT tax or other mechanisms to get that money in. We have to have extra money for firefighters, for pre-placement of firefighting. We have to have extra resources to do mitigation, clear out dry lands and the deep grasses that have grown. This is now going to be a part of what we do in government. So I think that's the right thing to do. I'd rather rely on resources that come from travelers because that's a climate impact issue.
I want to move on to Red Hill. We know at last check they were actually ahead of schedule, and you said you had an update?
Yeah, it's incredible. Actually, we're now at 99.5% drained from the gravity draining. That's 103 million gallons of fuel. We'll resume the next part of the process, which is now mostly sludge and the last bit that can't be easily taken out surely by gravity because it's below the pump level. But that's a really good development, and I'm grateful that everyone's working together.
Yeah, I know it's not all you, but any decision yet as to what that will be repurposed for? Or...
Nothing, basically, shut it down.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a shutdown. This next phase, after they get the complete draining done, we'll enter the kind of shutdown phase, and that's a different part of the Navy. We're already getting briefings on that. It will take time, but it's functionally shut down now. I mean, nothing's going to happen there except for the drainage.
We have been reporting that you just returned from Japan. We know it's a weekend, it's a strong dollar. What can really be done, though, to bring back the visitor with those economic conditions in place?
There's a couple things. So one thing that we emphasized was the business community in Japan wants to come back very aggressively, and so we're going to bring them in large tour groups. We'll bring back a lot of the kind of high-end tourism from the Japanese community that way. And also we've begun to explore a corridor of travel between Japan and Hawaii, which would be pre-clearance in Japan. That would require some resources to do kind of the customs clearance and the pre-clearance on their side. But if we had a corridor, and this has been attempted before, but I'm going to lean heavily into this in the next year, if we had that in place so that people could travel seamlessly back and forth between Japan and Hawaii, you could expect a huge percentage of the travelers that would otherwise go to North America stopping and staying here. And I think that's to our benefit.
Yeah, and I know you spoke to their leaders. How anxious are they to come back?
They're very anxious, actually. It is the yen, as Grace said. Yeah. The yen's still at like 150 to each dollar. That makes it almost impossible. Yeah. That means it's like $20 ramen here, as opposed to, I mean, when Jamie and I were there last week, it was like $6. I mean, it was very inexpensive. We were greeted with great warmth. I want to share that they asked about Maui and our survivors. Our biggest issue in Maui right now is going to be housing, and you should expect some announcements in the next 2 weeks from the mayor and myself. We need to develop housing. Anyone out there who has extra housing or would be able to consider putting an ADU on their property, we'd love to see that. But the Japanese community, first they gave us $2 million, and then they asked constantly if we were okay. They're a very great ally, and we will kind of be partners and friends and family forever.
I wanted to ask about an update for the stadium because I believe the contract is supposed to be awarded in mid-December. Where is the state on that? Because this is such a huge project.
Yes, technically it will launch the RFP in December, right? And then we'll award it, a few months later. It's on track now. And one of the groups that I met with over in Japan is likely one of the partners that will bid with a local partner here. So it will be exciting. They had extraordinary diagrams, and they've done a stadium, I believe, in Hokkaido, which was beautiful. But we will get a partner from Hawaii that may partner with a Japanese company, that may partner just locally. And I'm really high on this project. We do need to build it. It's important to kind of our spirit in Hawaii. It's important to have entertainment and attraction for outside venues and for the football program and concerts. But it's a part of just making progress. We're constantly making progress, even though most of our hearts are with Maui, and that recovery is going to be a long, difficult one. Lots of other life is going to go on across the rest of the state. So these are projects we're not going to turn our backs on. So come spring, you'll see me focusing again constantly on housing, homelessness, and tax breaks for people who are quite poor. A lot to do, but things are progressing.
Yeah. All right. Go. Thanks. We appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. 6:40 right now. We'll be right back after this.